But we'd like to get the genesis of this. This is microfinancing, smaller companies, and IBM as a large enterprise, then big data connecting all. Talk to us.
Sure. This project, as you've mentioned correctly, is in partnership with Twiga Foods, a fast-moving consumer goods company. And what we're trying to do here is develop a platform that enables the thousands of SMEs that FMCGs like Twiga Foods services to access financial services. And the way we do this is we leverage the data that Twiga Foods generates when they're delivering produce and other goods to their customers. And we apply machine learning and AI to develop a credit score and then essentially use the blockchain technology to track their transaction history. So then one day they can hopefully graduate and access other more formal financial services.
Right. In regards to the genesis, how far back does the conversation stem in regards to Twiga Foods? Is it before they were claimed to be a $30 million startup or prior?
Conversations with Twiga Foods started some point last year, around June, July, and this was as a result of IBM and Twiga Foods being in various panel sessions together. So that's essentially the genesis of that relationship.
Okay, let's jump now into the practicality on ground and what happened now within the pilot phase. The 8-week pilot processed more than 220 loans, average loan of about $30, increasing the order size as you went on. Of course, there are a lot of take-homes, but we'd like to hear it from both the technical bit and the applicability on what you think was the largest outcome.
Certainly. One of the biggest outcomes of this study was the fact that this platform was well received by the SMEs who were using it. So as part of the study, along with dispensing credit, we also ran some surveys and questionnaires to understand the SME's disposition towards the product. And we found overwhelmingly it was well received. We had a lot of repeat customers. Right. And on top of that, we had a fairly stable default rate, which tells us that financially this could be feasible and commercial.
Right. We haven't seen IBM deal with the NPLs before, and there's the issue of debt. Now, there's a rising debt. This particular segment of the market is notorious for not being able to pay back cash, whether immediate or not. What do you have to cushion yourselves?
It's a good question. IBM, as you know, offers services to some of the biggest banks in the world. And we have a depth of experience and expertise when it comes to the financial services sector. And when it comes to this particular project, we've done other credit scoring solutions in the past. Right? So when we went into this project, we knew very well what kind of NPLs we were looking for and what was feasible.
Okay, and is this Kenya-specific, Nairobi-specific, or is it something that can be replicated across with a little customization?
So this pilot was done in Nairobi. Right. However, we're looking to scale this up to other parts of the continent, and given market similarities in East Africa, West Africa, we believe it could be a real solution to the pain points that a lot of SMEs face, which is around credit and around documentation and data.
All right, let's get to a bit of the technical aspects, the technology behind it. So you utilize the JSON. Fully queryable, of course, helps minimize the work required to produce simple reports, which makes sense for the microfinance. But you also have the fact that it's a solid IBM application, and such tech has been known for larger enterprises. So matching these two for everyone to understand what you're working with.
Okay, so essentially what we try to do here is we try to make it as simple and easy as possible for startups and companies like Twiga Foods to integrate with our system. So we came up with a fairly standard interface, as you've said, JSON objects. Right. And what essentially happens is our system pings their platform. So as soon as an order is placed with Twiga Foods, we're able to receive notification that a transaction is about to happen, and we're able to then offer these SMEs the option to access financing for that particular order. On your second part of your question was around small enterprises versus large enterprises. Right. What we've seen is, in order for us to be effective, we do need to look at the entire spectrum and offer our solutions to as many potential partners and clients as possible.
All right, now the framework is around the Hyperledger Fabric, right? And this now can be scaled to other companies or other solutions, and I'm sure you're looking towards that in the future. But a lot of companies or countries have an issue with having solutions based entirely on the blue chip, on the blue company, on IBM. Has that been a source of concern for you?
I personally haven't seen that.
Right.
IBM produces some of the best industry solutions and,
right.
and platforms. This really isn't, I think, a concern that I've really seen.
All right, none at all whatsoever. So it's perfect now if we're moving on that, because all participants will have known identities if they're working with the Hyperledger Fabric, right? So in the event of scaling, what happens? Is it shared licensing, IP distribution, or entirely chained to you as IBM?
It really depends on that particular commercial engagement. There are a variety of different ways that clients and partners can decide on how to engage with IBM, and you've listed a few right.
Options,
IP, software as a service.
Right.
For that, it would have to be on a case-by-case basis.
Right. All right, I appreciate the timing of getting into the Kenyan market, because at this time the Kenyan ICT Ministry has said they want to incorporate a lot more blockchain technologies. So have you had any conversations on a national level to advise most of the policy in Kenya?
In fact, a few of my colleagues are on a couple of task forces, and IBM is very engaged in the blockchain community and helping usher this piece of technology to address some of the biggest challenges facing the continent.
All right, is there anything specific you'd like to mention out, or that's still embargoed for now?
I don't think I have
we'll
anything else to add.
Later, right? All right. So let's get back to practicality. Can it help the farmers, either bundled in cooperatives or otherwise, this particular technology?
I think so. So the way we've framed this is to say that any SME, and this can include farmers, this can include distributors, we can essentially and effectively create a financial profile, so all the data that these entities are generating, and enable them to access other services, as I mentioned, whether it's loans, asset financing, insurance. So moving it into other sectors, agriculture, healthcare, can have similar impact, I think.
All right. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about M-Pesa, of course, and I'm sure you had a lot of research based on that, equity and some of the banks and telcos in Kenya working towards that. Maybe you could just guide us through some of the entities you based most of your research or data on to see how microfinance or the lending space normally works for this segment.
Okay. So we look across the board. So we've been working very closely with SMEs. So these are, typically mom and pop shops, vendors who sell, various products on the high street.
Right.
These category of business has been of interest to us simply because of the percentage that they make up of businesses on the continent.
Right.
We've also looked at fintech companies who are offering more innovative payment solutions. Safaricom is a very, very interesting use case simply because of the pervasiveness of M-Pesa. We've studied how people make use of this to inform the solutions that we're developing.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, you've mentioned a very crucial point, the informal sector. 75% of Africa informal sector. Then we have blockchain solution, and largely accessed on a platform that most of this within the informal sector do not have. Is this the new age that we're actually getting into? Is this the reality now, or is something that we're looking forward to?
I think technologies like blockchain have a real opportunity to provide a form of disruption that can enable a lot of these, financially excluded or informal businesses to become formal, to create some of these financial profiles and footprints that we're talking about, because blockchain affords certain characteristics such as immutability, transparency, and so when it comes to institutions like banks, insurers wanting to provide formal services, they can see this data trail and then enable them to become financially included. So yes, it can definitely provide some of these leapfrog opportunities that we can definitely undertake on the continent. And because it's a fairly because the continent is very primed to take advantage of this opportunity to use this technology,
right,
we can see things moving a lot more quickly. So right now, we've just completed a deployment, which, as far as I know, is one of the first of a kind on the continent,
right,
and we're looking to really scale this.
Right. Of course, you're a lot more flexible with the pilot phase. You can make a lot of trial and error, but once it gets to market, you're a bit more stringent on the kind of errors you'd have. Just guide us through that transition from pilot to execution and actually now scaling on ground. Okay.
In order to take any proof of concept or pilot to productization, there are a number of steps you have to take. Number one, ensuring that it can actually take a significant throughput of transactions. So going from a couple of hundred transactions to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands is a technical challenge that needs to be addressed with any solution that you're trying to productize. Another one is around the commercialization, and we've discussed a little bit about it today. That really depends on the specific client and opportunity. And then finally, there is, I think, a lot of the points around regulation and policy and ensuring it's compliant with the rulings when it comes from central bank or other authorities like that.
All right. Final point has to do with what we have in the entire ecosystem. IBM with all these resources and research, and then we have the countries, at least with policy that allows even the microfinance and the supply for what you're trying to do. Bringing all this together and what we're executing and talking about today, what has been the largest challenge?
So I think the largest challenges, I wouldn't say challenges, I'd probably frame it as opportunities.
Right.
Opportunity here is to really formally bank and offer services to a large segment of the business community that previously hasn't had that opportunity. The opportunity here is to onboard other partners and clients. I think what we're maybe what we are maybe quite excited about is how far we can take the solution, to how many markets, and what the potential impact can be on some of the metrics that you were talking about earlier on around GDP and growth on the continent.
Right. Well, when you're talking to this particularly with Twiga Foods, because they've engaged with the vendors before, there's the aspect of bringing the costs of operation as low as possible. Do you intervene in that, or do you make it a lot easier for them to push this price lower?
I think we definitely, through our technology, I think we definitely do help reduce operational costs that entities like Twiga Foods experience, simply because what we're doing is we're enabling their SMEs to access a formal line of credit. We're on top of our technology providing things like analytics, so they're able to potentially identify what are the best routes, where are the best hotspots to deliver and send their distributors to. There are a lot of other value-added benefits that partners like Twiga Foods can derive from this solution.
Right.